Hello and welcome to Pixel Magic Tutorials. I am your host Geekman, and today we're going to learn how to create an asphalt texture. That's a standard road texture from scratch in Photoshop using no photographs to help us along. It's basically from scratch using only filters in Photoshop. So a couple of assumptions that I'm making right off the bat. Number one, I am using Photoshop CC 2017. So if you're using an earlier version of Photoshop, some of the effects may not work as expected. Second, I am using Windows. So if you're using a Mac, when I say hit the Control key on the keyboard, that means hit the Command key. And when I say hit the Alt key on the keyboard, that means hit the Option key. So with all of that out of the way, let's get started by hitting Control N on the keyboard. And let's bring up our new image dialog box. And let's name this Asphalt Texture, because that's what we're making. It's texture, not text2. Width of 3840 pixels, height of 2160 pixels, resolution is 150 pixels per inch, RGB color 8-bit. Background doesn't matter, we're going to change that. My color profile that I use, as always, is Adobe RGB 1998. Square pixels, hit create, and we're ready to begin. First, what we need to do is we need to set up our foreground and background colors. So let's click here on our foreground color, and we're going to change this to a nice light gray. And that color is going to be D4, D4, D4. A nice light gray there. And then we're going to click on our background color here, and we're going to change this into a very dark gray, which I am using 131313. That is a very, very dark gray. Hitting OK, we are now ready to begin creating the actual texture. Now let's rename our background layer and unlock it so that we can start using our filters on this layer. So we double click on background and it will bring up the new layer dialog box. And what you want to name this is base 5. Base 5. And you don't need to change anything else, so hit OK, and we are now ready with base 5. Now what we do here is very simple. We're going to go to filter, we're going to go to render, and we're going to go to clouds. And we now have clouds on our base 5 layer. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to invert that basically by doing difference clouds. We're not going to invert the layer by hitting Control I. We're actually going to go up here to filter. We're going to go to render, and we're going to go to difference clouds. And that turns it into this kind of inverted cloud-like thing. Then what we need to do is do that inverted clouds or difference clouds 4 more times, so 5 times in total. Now you can do that by going up here to filter and going to render and then difference clouds, or you can do Alt Control F or Option Command F on the Mac to repeat the last filter you applied. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use that keyboard shortcut in order to redo this filter 4 more times. So you're going to hit Control Alt and then F, 3, 4, and 5. So that's 5 times total that we have done it. We did it once with the actual command up here from the menu, and then we did it 4 more times using the keyboard shortcut of Alt, Control, and F. Now that we've done that, what we want to do is we want to duplicate the base 5 layer. So let's hit Control J on the keyboard. Then we want to rename this from base 5 to base 10. Okay, make sure that base 10 is then selected, and we're going to, once again, do the difference clouds filter 5 times. So hit Control Alt, and then F, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we have now done it 5 times. Now we're going to repeat that process with a base 15. So let's hit Control J to bring up a new layer called base 10 copy. Let's rename it as base 15. Okay, and then making sure that base 15 is selected, we're going to hit Control Alt and then F, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We now have 3 layers of difference clouds, each done 5 times more than last. Next, what we need to do is we want to reverse the order of these layers in our layers palette. So we're going to take base 5 and move it up to the top, and base 15 and move it to the bottom. So now it is base 15 on the bottom and base 5 on top. We are then going to right-click on base 15 and convert it into a smart object, and do the same thing with base 10, convert that to a smart object, and also base 5, convert that to a smart object. We now have 3 smart objects named base 5, 10, and 15, and we are going to turn off the top 2 layers and make sure that only base 15 is selected and visible. And then we are going to start putting in filter gallery filters. So let's go up here to filter. Let's go to filter gallery. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a smudge stick. Okay, so smudge stick is on the bottom here. And actually for the Chrome one here, I'll get rid of it just so that I can show you how to do the additional layers here. So the first one is smudge stick. And the values that we want here are going to be 2, 1, and 10. Then when you want the next layer of another filter, you just go down here to the new effect layer, click on that, and it will add one above. And then what you want to do is you want to go to under sketch and you want to choose Chrome. And you want to change the detail to 0 and the smoothness to 4. Okay, and then you are done with this, where smudge stick is on the bottom and Chrome is on top. And smudge stick, by the way, is found under artistic. Okay, so smudge stick and Chrome. Then you want to hit OK. And you now have the first layer, base 15, is ready. So let's go to base 10, turn that one on, select it. And we're going to go back to our filter gallery filters. So let's go to filter and filter gallery. And we can get rid of the Chrome here. And we're going to change our smudge stick. Smudge stick is now going to be palette knife. So palette knife is found under artistic. So click on palette knife. And here are the options that you're going to want for palette knife. You want 10, then you want 3, and then you want 0. So 10, 3, 0, and that is palette knife. Then you want to add in another effect layer. And the effect layer that we're looking for is called accent edges. Okay, and accent edges, I believe, is under here. Yes, under brush strokes is accented edges. And what you want is an edge width here of 2. Okay, you want an edge brightness here of 30. And you want a smoothness of 5. Okay, and that is our accented edges. Then the next one that we're going to want is a new layer effect here. So click on another one. And what you want this one to be is craquelure. So craquelure can be found under texture here. And you want this guy right here, craquelure. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that's how I say it, craquelure. So craquelure, you want these options. You want this to be 30. Up here under crack spacing, and under crack depth, what you want is 5. And then down here under crack brightness, you want it to be 6. So that's what you want. And you get this very cool looking effect over here. So then you hit OK, and we now have that effect. And what you want to do is change the base layer layer mode to color dodge right here. Okay, that's what you need to do there. So now you're getting this kind of an effect. Then you want to go to base 5, our topmost layer of bases. Turn that on, make sure it's selected. And let's change this layer mode to difference right now, just so you can see how this is going to work. And then what we are going to do is we're going to add on 3 more layer effects from the filter gallery. So let's go to filter, filter gallery. And the bottom one is going to be palette knife, and then accented edges, and then craquelure again. So palette knife, what we are going to use is 10, 3, and 0 again. So that stays the same. Accented edges, we're going to use 2, 30, and 5. And then craquelure, we're going to use 30, 5, and 6 again. So we're using the exact same effects. Okay, and then we're going to hit OK. Next, what we want to do is create a new layer of the merged 3 layers that we see here. And the way that we do that, we want to merge them all down into one layer and create one new combined layer. So what we're going to do is hit Control, Alt, Shift, and then the letter E on the keyboard, and that creates a brand new layer up here. And we're going to name this layer Merged Base. Okay? Once you have merged base, you no longer need these other 3 layers, so you can turn them off. Now that we've got our merged base layer, what we want to do is duplicate this layer by hitting Control J. And then what we want to do is change, we want to name this Subtract, like that. Okay? Then we want to convert it into a smart object, so right-click and convert it into a smart object. Then we want to change its layer mode to subtract, which is right here, okay, which gets rid of everything, okay? And what we want to do is give it a filter gallery filter of craquelure, Okay, so we're going to go up here to Filter, Filter Gallery, and then we're going to go to Craquelure. Okay, and we're going to get rid of these other guys here. So let's go here, get rid of that and get rid of that so that we only have Craquelure. Okay, then what we want to do is we want to use these options up here. For crack spacing, we want to make it 20. For crack depth, we want to make it 6. And for crack brightness, we want to make it 9. Okay, so that's the options that we want there. So then we're going to hit OK. And we now have the beginnings of what looks like pretty cool asphalt. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to change this a little bit. We're going to give it a little bit more of a texture feeling to it by creating a clouds layer above this. So let's go create a brand new layer there. Let's name this layer as clouds. Okay, and what we'll do is we'll go up here and we'll do filter, render, and clouds again. So let's go up filter, let's go to render, and let's go to clouds. Okay, we now have our clouds here. So we want to set our clouds layer to overlay, like so, which gives us this kind of, if you turn this off, it's just flat looking. If you turn it on, it gives you a little bit more depth as if it were a real road. Okay. Then we want to add a brightness contrast layer adjustment to this because right now it's very, very bright, right? This is far brighter than it should be if it were a real road. So what we're going to do is we're going to dim it down a little bit and make it look more like asphalt. So we're going to add a new layer adjustment style here. So we want to create a new layer adjustment over here, and the layer adjustment that we're going to do is a brightness contrast layer adjustment. Okay, and you can feel free to mess with these as much as you'd like. I have found, though, that because this is so bright, what I like the most is to take our brightness and bring it all the way down to negative 150. And then I like to take our contrast and I like to make that 70. Okay, somewhere around 70, just to give it more of a pop and make it look much more like it was real asphalt. Okay, it's got little pieces that seem to sparkle as if they were kind of glass. It's got a lot of ropiness to it, which if you look at asphalt, it sometimes does have that ropiness to it. So that, I think, looks very much like a real road. Now, what it's missing, though, is the lines you usually see on road, the dashed white lines or the solid yellow lines or anything in between. So that's what we're going to make next. So right now we have our actual background. So we can select all of this, all of these 4 layers. So you select the top one, hold down Shift, select the bottom layer here, and then we can convert them into a group by hitting Control G on the keyboard, and then we can name this as background. There you go. You now have a background. So next that we want to do is we want to change our foreground color to a nice kind of orangey yellow to simulate the road lines that you would find. So let's change our foreground color to that yellowish kind of orange. And I have found that CA0F is a nice kind of yellow for this effect. Okay, so that's the color that we're going to use. Then what we're going to do is use our rectangle tool. Okay, our rectangle tool right here. You can get there by hitting U on the keyboard or by selecting it right over here on the tools palette. Okay, once you have that, make sure that it is a shape. Its fill is going to be the fill color that we chose, no stroke, and we want to make sure that it is no other options need to be checked or anything, just this. All right, and then what we want to do is we want to draw a line from, say, left to right. Let's make it down here towards the bottom. And I think about that thick looks pretty good. So there we go. We now have our line, and it's as thick as we need it to be. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to change this into a smart object. So let's right-click on this, convert to smart object, and then let's change its layer mode to soft light. Okay, and as you can tell, it's very, very light, far lighter than it should be. So what we want to do now is we want to duplicate this 2 times. Okay, so we're going to go Control J, Control J. We now have 3 copies of the line, and it's looking pretty good. But if you ever look on the road, the lines are usually slightly kind of blurred out from being run over by cars, or maybe it's been removed and repainted several times. So that's what we're going to do now. What we're going to do first is we're going to rename these as yellow line 1, then yellow line 2, and then yellow line 3. Like so. We now have our 3 yellow lines. So the first line, we're going to go to, we're going to blur line 1 and line 2, the bottom 2 lines. So line number 1, we're going to go up here, we'll go to filter, we'll go to blur, and then to Gaussian blur, and we're going to change this to 20. That's it. Very easy. Hit OK, and then we're going to go to line 2, we're going to go to filter and blur and Gaussian blur, and we're going to make this only 10. Like so. Hit OK. And as you can see now, it looks as if it's blurred out a little bit at the edges, but the top line still gives it some solidness. So it looks more like the yellow line. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to hit our Move tool, which is V on the keyboard, and we are then going to select all 3 lines, making sure that we have all 3 lines selected. Hold down the Alt key, which will allow you to duplicate what you have selected. Click, hold down Shift, and then drag it down a little bit to make a double yellow line. We now have a double yellow line on our road. All right, so now we can select all of our yellow line. We can hit Control G on the keyboard to group them, and we can name them yellow lines. And let's say, just for the sake of argument, that you want to have the road dash lines that you usually see on roads to separate lanes on the roads. Okay, and we want to put it right up over here. So what we're going to do is create another new layer. We're going to change our foreground color to white. So let's just go back to black and white. You can do that by hitting D on the keyboard and then hit X on the keyboard to swap the foreground and background. So now white is our foreground. We're going to go back to our rectangle tool, which is U on the keyboard, and then we're going to draw a white line. Let's make our white line about yay big. That looks about right. And then once again, we need to duplicate this 3 times. Wait, first, before we do that, let's turn this into soft light. Like so, and we can go back to our Move tool just so that you can see the line better. And let's duplicate this layer 2 times. So Control J, and then we're going to rename this as white line 1 and white line 2 and then white line 3. White lines blow away. I can't sing. Don't ask me to sing. You'll regret it. Okay, so then what we want to do is on white line number 1, we want to do the exact same thing that we did before. We want to blur them. So we're going to do that now. We're going to go up here to Filter. Oh, wait. What we should do is turn them all into Smart Objects again. So let's right-click, hit Convert to Smart Object, right-click, Smart Object, right-click, Smart Object. We now have 3 Smart Objects. So our white line, number 1, let's go to Filter, let's go to Blur, let's go to Gaussian Blur, and let's make this 20. Hit OK, and then let's do the same basic thing with line 2. We're going to go to Filter, we're going to go to Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we're going to make this 10. Hit OK, and we now have our white dash line. That's pretty useful. So select all 3 of them. Go back to your Move tool if you're not there already. And then you're going to hit Alt and then click and then hit Shift and you drag. And we now have our second white line, like so. And if you wanted to, you could just move this out a little bit more, like so. There we go. And then let's say we wanted another one just peeking in over here, or we just want to move this guy over a little bit. Let's just do that. There we go. And then let's duplicate this by hitting Alt and click and then drag and hold down Shift. And we get that. Whoops, that was wrong. Okay, hold down Shift. We got to stay on target. There we go. And you now have a road, pretty much. Let's move this in a little bit more, like so. You now have a road. Looks pretty good to me, and we made it from scratch without using any photos to help us along making this asphalt road texture. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up, and subscribe. I do new tutorials every Tuesday. Once again, this is Geekman signing off for Pixel Magic Tutorials.